Hello, product people. Welcome to the Product for Product podcast, hosted by Matt Green, data advocate and product manager, and Moshe Mikanovsky, product leader and author. Our goal is to serve the product community by helping you find products that can help make your work in product management easier. Thanks for joining us on another episode of the Product for Product podcast.
Welcome back, everyone. On today's episode, Moshe and I are happy to speak with AI and engineering leader Marcos Polanco about his method for creating real software with AI called Clear. So let's dive in. Welcome to the show, Marcos.
Welcome. Very glad to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Happy to have you. Hey, Moshe.
Hey, Matt. Hey, Marcos. Welcome to the show. You are joining us all the way from the Bay Area.
That's right. We're San Francisco Bay Area, kind of like the center, the gravitational force of the AI universe.
That's right.
Yes. Even though Toronto is where a lot of AI research happens, it's just that you guys are still in all the brain power. Once we develop it over here, we move to San Francisco.
And not to put Atlanta down, we're like the Silicon Valley of the South. So I just want to get our plug in there. I don't want to be discounted.
There you go. I did my graduate work at Georgia Tech. I'm a
wonderful.
Big fan of
There we go. Full circle.
Amazing. Thank you for joining us on the show. And just to mention it for the audience, your background is not necessarily in product management, but more product engineering as an engineer. So tell us a bit about that first, and then just in high level, and then we'll dive into the topic of today's episode.
Got it. So thanks for the opportunity to chat a little bit about my favorite topic, me. So for the past, I've actually been a software developer for many years. I taught myself when I was a teenager, and only later went to undergrad in that area. Worked in Silicon Valley in a number of companies as an engineer. Founded a company, and then later focused more on building out startup ecosystems. Before going back into engineering role, my most recent role was launching a product and then growing to VP of engineering at a hardware company here in the Bay Area in Berkeley. And now as an independent, I've focused on researching really the impact of AI in the software development process. And it's been a very interesting ride because we are just at the beginning of a sea change in how we develop, but also how we organize the teams for development.
That's very true. And we met actually on a session of mentorship in product development for Founder Institute. I think it was for San Diego chapter, if I'm not wrong.
That's right.
And you presented your methods to do, which you call Clear, and you will tell us why. To build with vibe coding to the founders. And many of the founders, I notice, well, in general, many founders are not technical. So they want to use all of those tools. And we already talked on the podcast about Lovable. We talked about Base 44. We talked about some other tools. And we know that these things become very, very easy these days.
Yes.
But it's hard for founders to actually do it because they don't have the experience, not just of an engineer, they don't have the experience of product managers. And we know as product managers, what goes into it before you even write code. Mm-hmm. So before we dive into that, tell us your view. What did you find out about vibe coding and building with this type of products?
Well, If I go to the beginning of me using these kinds of tools, which was probably Bolt.new, is the tool that I started with now a year ago, maybe a little bit more than that. And if you were to look at my GitHub, you will find lots of crash and burn repos, because suddenly I was inside a Formula One car, and the slightest error just drove that car right into the wall. And there's like 5 or 6 repos that are just me driving the car into the wall and not being able to recover it. Mm-hmm. And that was really kind of like the beginning of thinking, oh wait, how do you drive your car? Like, this is a really fast car,
Hmm.
How do I drive it for sustained velocity, maybe not for max speed? And that is a distinction that is important for us to recognize as we leverage these tools. In a way, AI is an idiot savant. And you might have, a person that doesn't know anything but suddenly can, play Beethoven. It's like,
Yep.
and that is the trick, that it's incredibly capable and eager, but lacks judgment. So then the question becomes, how do we shape our collaboration with the intelligence, with the agent, in a way that taps into its powers and buffers us from its failings?
Yes, yes. And I love this metaphor of a car and driving
Hmm.
the car because it's almost like, I mean, in my head, I'm taking it to a different direction because in my head, I'm like, yes, the founders, they want to build something, or anyone want to build something new that doesn't exist. They think but that giving it a few prompts will build the entire car and it will be perfect.
Mhm.
And we know that that's not going to happen, and it's not happening. It's not a few prompts. There is a lot that needs to happen over there in order to actually build the car. You were talking about your car is more of the engine that help you build the software. I'm almost thinking about a car that is giving birth to another car, and
Oh,
and that other car that is given birth to is not a clone. It's really something new. And if you don't have that background and experience about in building products the old way, it might not mean that just by giving a few prompts to the parent, that it will be able to create that amazing child.
the,
And I'm
the,
and I'm and I'm wearing my McLaren sweatshirt today, so I really connected with the F1 analogy
F1,
there.
the
So
winning team,
yeah, absolutely. So I
Lando
just
and
Yeah.
yeah
Well, this is
yeah
more
go
like
ahead.
etc.
Disney, where they actually personalize the
Yeah
cars and they can actually give birth to other cars, I guess.
yeah.
But
No, I just really connected with it because I thought that like from an F1 perspective, from a fast car perspective, like somebody, if you give the keys to somebody, they may think they have a production ready application out the gate. And they're not thinking about all the other back end stuff that has to go into like authentication and things like that. So to your point, an F1 car, they're just going to get going quickly and forget about all the other necessary things that make a production ready application.
Mhm.
And that's why my general advice is to decide what you want up front. If you want to prototype, if you want to visualize, if you want to show an engineer or explore ideas, then vibe coding is great. It's fabulous at going with the flow, at creating UIs and then almost getting into a conversation with it. Fabulous. Where it's not great is in shipping anything that is going to go to production. And
Hmm.
and that is and so it's great if you use it uh for that purpose. Not so good if you try to take it in a different way without particular approaches, which is what Clear is all about.
Yeah. So if you think about prototypes versus MVP versus production grade product, an MVP is somewhere in between because you still want to create value to the users.
Yes,
So it has to have some production grade, but we know that MVPs usually are throwaways because they don't scale, etc. Do you feel that MVPs are still okay? Where would you put MVPs? Would you build them with vibe code applications?
I would definitely build them with a production-oriented mindset,
Okay.
rather than a prototyping-oriented mindset. And
Mm.
the tool might be the same. It's simply how you use the tool and how you leverage it in order to
Okay.
achieve the goal that you have in mind.
Okay, great, great. So your framework, for the lack of other words, it's not like some people don't like that word, so we try not to use it, but we have no other words in English, I guess. But
Method.
tell us what is clear, and I guess this is a good background for that. It's a production-oriented mindset first, and then you have a method on how to actually do it, right?
That's right. That's right. So very briefly, I'll go over what each of the letters mean, and then I'll share what happens in each element. Now, C stands for context. If you were training a new employee, you got to onboard them. You got to show them the ropes. You're like, what's going on here? So same with the AI. You got to share the context. The second is layout, which is what is the face, what is the task decomposition, and what facing are we doing things, etc. You got to lay out the project so that the AI can be oriented at each and every step. If you think about it from a managerial perspective, you don't just hire an employee into General Motors and do stuff. You hire them in a specific role with a specific scope, with people that are going to offer inputs into that work and outputs from there, so that that worker can be productive without having to learn everything that's going on. You kind of use managerial tactics in order to help that person be productive with a very limited scope. And layout is all about that. It's all about breaking down the project so that at any given point in time, the agent can be very focused and not overwhelmed. Because that's one of the big limitation with software agents or coding agents is they get overwhelmed, and then they become stupid when that happens, and the productivity goes straight through the floor. So you got to lay it out, and that's really managerial tactics. E stands for execute. That's when actually you sit down and actually build, step by step, everything that is going to go into the software. A is assess. So we want to assess how the work was done. And then R is run. You got to, run the software and let it kind of create new information, because that entire idea of agile is to put running software in front of users or people who are actually using it, so that then they can then offer you new context, and now you are in a loop again. So that is the entire idea of Click.
Okay, that's great. Reminds me really of a lot of what we do as product people as well. We just have different documents and different processes and different things there. What I liked about how when you presented it, and let's maybe dive into that a bit more, is how do you do that? How do you set up the context? How do you set up the layout? How do you execute?
Yes. So the context is at the simplest level is what is supposed to happen. And we call that user stories in product. In the world of product, we typically talk about job stories or user stories. I use the Gherkin language, which comes from the world of behavior-driven design, to articulate the stories and scenarios in a very structured format. So that and for the folks that have worked with that format, which is kind of like it's structured but English-like, so both man and machine can read it and understand it, is that then you have a very well-defined outcome, and that is highly testable. And that's the whole thing with AI. It's probabilistic. And so we need to have a very, very good idea of what the target is. So first, I use Gherkin BDD to articulate the requirements, and then match that with a design. And that design can come from Figma, come from anywhere. Typically, my approach is to get it into HTML, so that by the time that the execution step comes, the AI doesn't have to think, oh, how do I take this and turn it into these constraints and etc. You don't have to. You've already kind of done the heavy lifting up front. We don't want the AI to become overwhelmed. In fact, product people probably know the book "Don't Make Me Think."
Yes.
And "Don't Make Me Think" is the organizing principle for Clear, because we want to limit the cognitive load of the coding agent. So everything is organized around that. So we start with BDD articulation. Then for the layout stage, that's the most engineering part, because you're going to pick the technology stack, you're going to pick the architecture. A lot of it can be generated. You can actually tell the AI generate the stack and the architecture for given these requirements. And then you, as a reader, can look, oh, I don't want to use, Flutter. I want to use React Native or whatever. And you correct it, and you state exactly what you want. And that can turn a little bit engineering. So probably you want to call an engineer in to choose the stack given the scope that you're trying to do. And then comes the execution step. And here we go to the test-driven development approach. In test-driven development, and now you're purely in the world of engineering, you ask the developer, write the tests first around the behavior. Remember, we were using Gherkin, around the behavior. And then once you have the tests, then all you have to do is code to the test, almost study for the test if it were a human.
Yeah.
And again, it lowers the cognitive load. You're not asking the AI to both code and figure out if the code is working. It's very easy. Run the test. It doesn't work. You get errors. Fix the errors. Iterate until it's done.
So you actually tell the AI, you actually do that. You actually tell the AI, write the tests first, and then anything that they write later on, they have to run the tests to see that it actually passed the test.
Exactly. They're not done until the test pass.
Interesting.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because one of the issues I've seen all the time when I tried vibe coding is regressions. So all the time there were regressions and regressions and regressions, and I was like, okay, this is not like a person that at least a person can think about the entire system. Here, it only think about one area and it breaks something else, and then it like fix that and it breaks the first thing, and then
well, it hallucinates too. It's like, hey, change the color of this button, and it's like, I changed the color of the button, and it doesn't actually change the color of the button.
Yeah. So regressions are the devil in the details, and often again it's just super eager. It wants to please, and it notices other things and wants to kind of polish and it breaks stuff. So it's kind of like a teenager. But again, from a McDonald's can take a teenager and make them productive workers.
yes.
So it's really about the system, that we surround that agent with in order to make it productive. If you were to look at my code bases, the test coverage is super high. And because they're driven by the BDD, then there's high relevance to the tests. So that's the execution step. Then comes assess, which is probably the most non-obvious step. During layout, we create a phased implementation plan. So then during the assess, we ask create tests, integration and end-to-end tests to prove that that phase was completed. So the execution step, which is the developer, wrote tests and claimed completion. But AIs are super, they're like very optimistic. It's like, oh yeah, I it was amazing. I did a great job. And no, you didn't. So you actually have a second agent go off a test plan for each phase. And I use a different LLM completely. So if I'm using Cloud Code to code, I'll actually use Gemini to verify.
Interesting.
And the reason is that they were trained by different people and they have a slightly different perspective, slightly different perspectives.
So the test-driven development, who writes those tests? Is it the first one or the second one?
The first one. The AI writes its test for the purpose of coding.
Okay.
So, and then there is another test writer that does it for the purpose of verification. So the AI for execution probably won't write a end-to-end test, but the one for verification of the phase will.
I see. And you use the generic LLMs? You don't use a specific products for that?
I don't. There's a lot of, and this is not I'm not bashing the products. It's simply that my approach has been to build it from first principles.
Mm, mm,
And so right now, I think it would actually damage my thinking if I use a product that wraps a lot of this into some magic.
mm.
Then I am not understanding what is
I
going
see.
on. And from an engineer, and magic is fine if you're prototyping, but it's not fine if you're an engineer.
Yes,
You really
exactly.
need to
Yeah.
know what's
Hmm.
going on.
Exactly. That's what I wanted to add, that as an engineer and going into production, you definitely want to know what's going on. So I understand that. When we talked with people that are not engineers, but are product more on the product end of things, they were like, yeah, just simplify everything for me. I don't want to know how it happens. So
Yeah,
it's a
that's
very
where
different, very different
that's kind
approach.
of where I'm coming from. I don't have an engineering background, so like time to value. Hey, AI can do it for me. It's an easy button. So going back to first principles, I just say, what are we trying to accomplish here? What's the problem we're
Mhm.
solving for? Are we trying to prototype? That's one thing. But do we want to build an application that does something? I keep going back. Context is key, and you need to understand the problem you're trying to solve for, and then obviously the amount of work you put into it, like you keep saying, we talked to another guest, Sani, who mentioned you don't want to give the AI too much because it's gonna find problems. It's gonna be a problem if you give it too much work to do. So
Mhm.
from a time perspective and from a person that doesn't have an engineering background, like how do you break this down and like kind of go about building all this? Do you use the AIs as like basically your team and all that?
I do, and there is a special element with me in particular is that I'm doing it in the context of research. Yeah, I'm trying to drive this as far as I can, and just like if you're writing, say, Python or C, etc., we don't look at the compiler output. We assume that the compiler is going to do the job of turning our third generation language, something like Java, Python, JavaScript, into machine code. We don't even look at that. And what I'm trying to get clear to get to the point where we can have the same level of assurance without having to look at the outputs. So if I'm doing kind of like we're in the scope of my research, side projects, etc., I'm kind of like pushing it to the limit. If I'm doing client work, then yes, I'm reading the code, I'm checking,
Yeah.
I'm more intentional. But from a research perspective, it is possible, and I'll actually argue better.
Mhm.
Now, there is a if I may take a step back because I was talking about the assess stage and only we have spoke a little bit and then I'll share where it actually becomes better. So assess is a separate LLM using its own tests to verify the completion of a particular phase of work. And here is something super important. If there's a bug, it is essential, and here's a very human step, is to conduct a five whys exercise of what led to it. And five whys really comes from lean manufacturing disciplines of asking, okay, uh, that button, it should be red, not blue. Why is, why did that happen? It's like, oh yeah, we didn't test for it. Well, why did our testing policy not write the test that would have caught it? Oh, because some assumption happened that
Mhm.
led to the not the right test being written. And then you go, okay, update the upstream layout documents
Mhm.
so that, which is the root cause, so that next time we would have written the test that would have caught the bug. AIs are terrible at this.
Mhm. Mhm.
You
Mhm.
really need a human mind to kind of force the thinking process of the AI until you can get back to the root cause and then update
Yeah.
the upstream documents.
Interesting. Interesting. So the assessment has these two portions of first the digital assessment by another AI, and second
Mm,
the understanding of the root cause, so we can actually go back and update all the different documents for each one of the phases because it might have happened in a much earlier phase. It might have happened on the context setting. It might have happened somewhere else.
Yes, and you want to conduct that investigation.
Mm-hmm.
What you don't want to do is start off-roading with AI and trying to correct it and just enter, that's like a sidebar, for product. Imagine if engineers accepted requirements around the water cooler. Once you go into the water cooler with AI, you're lost. You lost because now you have requirements that you're adding, willy-nilly,
I
and
would
suddenly you don't have a system that
I would
will
guess
ever go anywhere.
99% of people using AI these days are doing it that way. What they don't realize is that they are at the water cooler. They think this is
That's
it.
it. That's it. Yeah, that's what I was kind of getting at. Like, it's the time to value. Oh, this thing's so cool. You can build an application really quick, and it's just all the other stuff that goes on that they're not witness to.
Yes.
Mm.
So that's the assess step, and I can go over run. It's actually the simplest element right now because it's kind of the frontier of where I'm going, which is basically run the software. And there's a ton of value that can come from that because that's when you pick up product analytics. That's when you pick up telemetry from systems to then build up a great context. I actually haven't in my work yet closed that loop with the run stage. So it's kind of like in TBD mode, but that's where I'm going. We're gonna then have a closed loop where we're gonna be able to then build a new level of context for the next iteration of the clear loop.
I see. So the idea will be also to utilize AI for that?
Yes.
Okay, so the AI will analyze the information that is being collected throughout the running of the product, and based on the information collected, it might update all the context, layout, execution documents for the next time that you run it, or for any updates.
Oh, or for any updates. That's right.
I see.
That's right.
That's going to be really, really interesting to see how that happens because you also want to have I think you want to have the woman in the loop making the call about what priorities are and all of that stuff. Even though prioritization might be easy to put in as a mechanism, the information to evaluate your prioritization is all of that discovery that we're doing and interviews and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there is a lot of data points in there.
Yeah, what you gather from as today, what you gather from the logs and from the analytics, is just data, and you don't let the AI just run with it, so it'll be part of whatever context is built for the next iteration of the loop.
Yeah.
But obviously, it's going to be primarily driven by user interviews, et cetera. But it'll be a source to help derive that next iteration.
Okay.
Now, you mentioned Claude and Gemini usage. What's your take on these other tools like Lovable and Cursor and Replit? Like, do you see these tools? Do you use these tools? Number one, but do you see these tools delivering that value that you're aiming for with Clear?
I do not.
Okay.
I use Bolt. I still have a subscription, and I'm probably going to cancel it. I think it's a fabulous product. It's simply not for me,
Hmm.
in that it doesn't facilitate what I'm, the approach that I'm promulgating. On a day-to-day basis, there are three tools that I use: Cursor, Claude, and Gemini. I tend to use Gemini is well known for having a very large context window, and I didn't mention that incidentally,
Mm.
that everything we've been doing has all been about what the cool kids call context engineering. We just
Hmm.
haven't used those words because it's kind of like too engineering. But what we've been doing, if you think about what we've been talking about, is using managerial technique to reduce cognitive load. But just going back to the models, because that's what you asked about, Gemini is well known for having a very large context window. So it can just basically read a whole code base at the same time. And it's ideal for refactorings or that kind of application. And then I use Cursor when I'm doing more UI work because it has an integrated browser. You don't have to configure typically when you're coding, you can get basically the trace from the browser back to the agent in an easy way. Cursor, it just makes that so much easier. And Claude is just super powerful and configurable, and I kind of live in there. And then I use those other two tools for, when oh yeah, it'll be better if I actually have an integrated browser, or it'd be better if I had a million token context window, etc.
The one thing that interests me is when I saw your presentation last time, well, actually, you mentioned it today as well. You write those documents in HTML or in
Markdown.
Markdown. Yes, thank you. So you write
Mhm.
those documents in Markdown. You're a developer, so for a developer, it kind of makes a lot of sense. The question is, why does it have to be written in Markdown versus just plain English? Even if you set up in the plain English a specific structure, and I guess the Markdown is basically to create the structure, but you could have used JSON, you could have used XML, you could have used something that create a structure there. So for someone that is not an engineer, do they still need to do it as a Markdown document?
Uh, That would me that would be my recommendation, and it's less. I'm hoping that it will come across as less intimidating than it appears.
I know. It's
The,
not. I know. I definitely know. But you know how it is. Like if someone doesn't have the
yes,
technical background, they will ask ChatGPT to create a Markdown for them from the Word document that they created. So
yes, yes.
Mhm.
Well, so ultimately, if we're comfortable, I mean, just for the listeners, Markdown is simply a very simple way of creating HTML documents. So you have bold, you have italics, you have blocks, you have paragraphs. It's a very simple way, and so you end with a document that anybody in the organization can read and contribute to. And it's also a document, because it's very simple, that the agents can read. Over time, we will discover that we want a format that is easy for both humans and agents to read and process. Markdown, with its extensions, for example, mermaid charts and diagrams, are proving to it's going to soon become the lingua franca of the organization, because it really enables that legibility by both human and machine.
interesting. I mean, for people using Gen AI today, they believe that AI can read text. It doesn't need markup. So the same way that they can read it, the AI can read it, analyze it, and understand whatever it understand from it, and then give you whatever it's supposed to give you. So that's maybe the small nuance that from what you have seen, it's not actually true, and a markup is a better way to do that. That actually it will understand what you want.
It is if you were to give an AI a PDF, for example, yeah, it will consume it. Let's see what's happening with the cognitive load
Mm.
of the AI when you give it a markdown, which is almost plain text, just slightly flavored plain text, versus a PDF or an image or whatever. Now you're asking it to do more work. Markdown also has the benefit that because it's kind of plainish text, it works really well in GitHub repos, in Git repos.
Mm,
I also have a small prediction that a lot of us are going to end up working in Git soon.
mm.
But that's for another day. And it makes it very easy to work in a version controlled world.
Okay.
So yes, you can do things in docx format. Sure, it's going to work. Eventually, Markdown will win. It's just a matter of
I'm
time.
yeah, I'm actually all for structure. Coming from engineering world, I know structure really helps, structure the world from top to bottom, from bottom up, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But the more and more people are, and I started seeing these positions in some organizations, prompt engineer. It's a real position.
Hmm.
It's not, I thought in the beginning it was a joke, but I saw people on LinkedIn with that
Right.
position title that, LLM and NLPs are basically here to stay. And that's what people are going to speak with the computer with, the interface with the computer with just plain language
Hmm.
where I can definitely see the value in the structure of Markdown. Absolutely. The question is how many people, not so much from the technical perspective, but from organizing their thoughts and organizing the end-to-end document, are actually going to do that.
Hmm.
Well, I would hope that we would get a editors that make it what you see is what you get. But I mean, you're actually offering me a product idea of kind of like
Mhm.
a what you see, what you get that actually kind of like guides you towards structuring your thoughts.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
so thank you. I might, I might vibe code that
Go for it, and you'll
tonight.
come again to our podcast to talk about it.
Yeah.
But
I think,
yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we are all looking for shortcuts. Everyone is looking for shortcuts, right?
I think that's
And
it. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And we talked about it in the podcast even before this series that the AI prompt and response paradigm made everyone very, in my mind, very lazy towards this is the only interface in the world that now we have to interact with. None other interfaces that people invented before are useful. And it's not true because we know that there are many other very, very useful interfaces that are much more useful than prompt and response.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's just so easy that you can, I mean, you can type a prompt in, you can misspell things, you can have things out of order. And some things I do is to make my prompts better. So I'll write up something and then I'll give it to one, model, and then I'll give it to another model. Kind of what like Marcos, like what you said, like I will allow them to critique themselves, but
Hmm.
I think 95% of the people doing things aren't thinking like that. They're just like, I'm going to type a thought in,
yeah,
and the AI is just so quick to produce something that it is a bit of laziness. But I think most people are like, because it's the F1 car, that we didn't learn to drive the Camry. We learned to drive the F1 instantly out of the gate. And,
You're right. You're right.
so we didn't build these, if we didn't build the parameters around, like, we need to give it load contact, like give it the context and then reduce its load on what it has to do.
that's exactly what we do with developers when
Yeah.
we develop a product. We don't give them, here is one sentence, go develop this.
Hmm.
We create a lot of why behind it and context and
Yep.
structure and break it down to models. And now we're working on this model, not on all the other models. And they do
Right.
still have to work with each other, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I think that's what attracted me to your presentation when I saw it, Marcus, because Matt already knows, and some of our listeners, that I'm not the poster child for AI adoption. But part of it is also because of that, wishy-washy way to use it in my mind, and
Hmm.
results that I get in my mind, right?
Yeah. I
So
mean,
having a structure in it sounds like a very good idea to me. I'm grateful that you came to share it with us today.
it's my pleasure.
Yeah, yeah. Amazing. I think I had another question to ask, but I can't remember what it was now.
Got
One
it.
question I can think of is, I use it as a product manager for prototyping. So first principles again, what am I trying to accomplish? I want to work with AI as a partner to produce prototypes and ideate on the best experience. But if I want to take it to that next level, we've talked to previous guests, we get it to the 80%. There's that 20% that it doesn't do well. What would be the first step? How do we bridge that gap with that last 20%, I guess is what I'm trying to get at.
You're mentioning the last 20% that's what humans are for.
Yeah.
That's what, there's a great example that just happened to me yesterday where I was trying to debug a problem and I threw cloud code at it. It promised me that it had solved the problem 6 or 7 times, made no dent. Then I switched to Gemini, no dent. Then I gave it to Cursor, no dent. And then I just looked at the page and I said, what if we move this over here? Literally, there was an element that was outside of a tab system. What if we take that thing and move it here? Boom, fixed. It just doesn't have the same the common sense, and it aims to please. So it doesn't know if we take one step back, we might be able to go 5 forward.
Right.
It doesn't have the judgment. And so yes, there is continued employment for humans.
And with that clear framework, that 20%, you're almost talking about doing that up front. So that's doing that 20% to begin with by giving it the context, by giving it the parameters to work with. And that way, that last 80% is the kind of the easy part for it. It's like, oh, okay, I know what you're looking for. I can do the rest through the 80%.
I think even then it will have this 20% at the end.
Still going to have it.
I think it's still going to have it. So maybe when we talked in the past about 20%, it was probably more than 20%.
Probably so.
It was probably like 40% without the structured context and all of that up front. Mainly because edge cases are very, very hard. We know as developers that you work most of the time on edge cases. It's the happy path is the easiest part. And the edge cases are those things that I don't think any AI will know how to develop to tackle unless you actually, maybe there is a need for AI that only does edge cases, that somehow run the system through some, I don't know, pushing and pulling and whatever, just to find those and try to fix them.
One of the tricks in that realm is actually, instead of trying to code, do a Stripe integration, right? Like, it's codable. Why don't I go into GitHub, find 15 examples of Stripe integrations and just crib them?
Yep.
And so you're able, that's a kind of like a little next level trick. And so I actually download the whole repos and say, look over here. They implemented all this stuff. It's like, oh yeah, I get exactly how to implement it. Boom. So maybe we can get to another 80% times, get it to 96%. So that's what we're working on.
Yeah. No, that's great. Yeah, I remember what was the question I wanted to ask. And this is related to, if we're thinking now somewhere between engineers or more towards product managers, right? So we as product managers, we write a lot of documents, about what the product is about, the context of the product, the research of the product, the vision, the strategy, a lot of those things. Then we write a lot of stories and many of those things, right? So where do you see moving Clear into, or the product managers helping with Clear, I would say, to get whatever we write into that structure? So then when the developers actually come to the picture to start developing this, they already have a lot of it ready, or they just add on top of that, etc.
So the handoff point is the context stage. That's where everything begins. Here's the design, probably a link to Figma, and here are the requirements, probably a set of stories. As another fact, that's what we're expecting. Now, right now, I don't have that translation layer built out because it's unlikely that the PM is working inside Git, redacting these documents directly. So you probably need a translation layer that will grab the information from Confluence or wherever it is, and then just put it into a document that the agent can read. It is also possible, although I haven't really explored deeply, to use MCP servers as interfaces to allow the agent to go straight into Jira or straight into
Mm,
Confluence or
I get that.
wherever the
Yeah.
data is. I haven't needed to do that in my practice, but if for in a more enterprise situation, that's probably what would happen, is that you would build a technical bridge to take the information for where it lives into where it needs to be.
But then,
Figma has a fabulous MCP server, so for getting the design into code, that is that's a solved problem with a Figma license.
with Figma,
Hmm.
I think it will be much easier because it's visual and it's the actual designs, especially if it's already high fidelity. With
Yes.
stories in Jira, etc., it might be much harder because it's still words and it's still the translation of those words into what do we actually mean here. And
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
all as good or as bad as the person that wrote them. And now some product people are just using GPTs to write those documents for them. So that's
Mhm.
another layer to the madness.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Perfect. I don't have any other questions. What about you, Matt?
At the rate of AI's change these days and how fast things are going, where do you see us in a year with these prototyping tools? Do you see them continue to be what they are today? Or do you see applications coming into the market that are primarily built with AI? I'd be curious to learn that.
It's already the case that there are some success stories
Okay.
of folks that went all the way to market with vibe coding, etc. You never know the details. You can't assume that yes, you might be a promising high school senior. Doesn't mean that you're going to become Michael Jordan. So it has happened.
Hmm.
I'm sure that it will continue to occur. I'm doing everything I can to make that real. And there's a lot more to it, kind of like security, et cetera. But you kind of the same framework, but just
Hmm.
layers and layers of sophistication that you can add to it.
Yeah.
So that is definitely going to happen. One of the things that I've discovered in my work process in terms of is that it's not just gonna this is gonna really uh, become that there's two things I would say. One is the resistance from the engineers is gonna continue to be significant because these tools and processes uh, undermine the self image of software developers as craftspeople.
Hmm.
And we actually, if you had seen my product development mentorship coaching deck was all about, oh, you got to treat software developers as writers because we're writing the great American novel, and if you see somebody else's code, it's bad because it's not yours.
Mm.
Hmm.
And so these tools really challenge the self-conception of the software engineering profession. And that is actually the next great front is actually the change management to be able to properly adopt the tools. As you might know, like it was only once factories reorganized around electricity could they actually get the
Hmm.
productivity gains. And so we haven't yet reorganized around electricity. So so that is the big one on engineering. And then the other one, since I mentioned it in my own workflow, is that I've actually seen how it can totally impact the coordination layer. I've actually moved all my task management into an AI-driven system to the point that manages dependencies, sizing, etc. Uh, and all I have to, I simply ask it, what am I supposed to be doing? And it knows. It has all the context of my goals over time, dependencies, everything. So I'm always at maximum effectiveness. This is completely separate. This is all in a completely separate domain, but using the same infrastructure that we're building for software. So those are two areas of
Yeah.
growth over the next year.
Interesting.
Prior guests as well, we talked about design. So how AI is going to impact design as well, because we know design is takes their work very personally, and AI could whip up a design, and be curious how that change management works as well.
Yeah, I think everyone is worried, but everyone also saying it's not going to happen to us.
Yeah.
So-
But I think a good takeaway here, though, is that there's still a need for humans in the loop.
Yes.
Our AI overlords aren't going to take over quite yet. So
That's right.
What I love about the episodes in this series is that it clears the air a bit, the fog that we have around AI, because the entire system is very, very foggy about what's possible, what's not possible, what should we do, what we shouldn't do. Very, very muddy. And discussions like this one really clears a lot of it, to me at least. So I hope also to our audience.
I will hope so.
Amazing.
yeah, 100%.
Where can people find you and reach out to you?
So I am. I'll offer you for the show notes. I am Marcos Polanco everywhere on the internet, and my email is marcos@ioncrest.com, and that's the easiest way to find me.
Amazing. Yeah, if you can share with us links to resources that people can find out and then reach out to you, that will be also very helpful.
Happy to do so.
Amazing.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Marcos. The work you're doing is great to see. Keep it up. I'll keep an eye on it. And Moshe, thanks as always. And thank you to all the listeners. And we'll talk to everybody next time. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you to all the listeners. We really appreciate the feedback and support. Please leave us a review to help others find the show on Apple or Spotify or anywhere else you're listening to the show.